after detail, TV in this, show about that. And I get to try to bring it together and to tell you that everything that you've absorbed is only part of the story. And really, you have to look back over 100 years to Marconi in 1890s developing the radio to get a picture of what's really going on. And when the radio was being developed, no one had an idea of how transformative radio would become in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. Through World War II, the radio was instrumental on all sides of that fight. And then the next big change was the beginning of television. There was some very early broadcasts by the BBC in 1929, but it didn't really take off until the 1950s. And then the advent of free-to-air television, starting in 1950, grew around the world, then augmented with cable and satellite television, starting in the 80s and 90s. And the next big change is really the internet television. And at each of these junctures, the development of radio, the development of free-to-air TV, the development of cable and satellite TV, and then finally internet TV, new networks were born. And so in the beginning, in radio, I'll do in US terms mostly, you know, it's CBS was formed as a radio network. Okay, BBC was formed, a radio network. And then eventually TV started, and you got new TV networks like NBC in the US and others around the world. And then finally there was cable and satellite, and we have 100 new channels that were formed. And so now with the internet, we're going to see thousands of new channels being formed. So we think historically of a TV channel or network as being a big deal. You have to be a major corporation. But now, if you can build a website, you can have a TV network. And so the proliferation of apps and websites that do video and basically form a TV network are one of the most exciting things that we've ever seen. And in Netflix, we realized a long time ago, 20 years ago, that eventually we'd be able to deliver video over the internet. But the internet in 1997 was still all dial-up. And we realized, well, we can do a website, but we're going to have to deliver the video by mail. That was the DVD by mail phase. So for 10 years, all we did is DVD by mail till 2007 when we started streaming. And then finally, we could live up to our name, Netflix, and deliver the video over the internet. But in 2007, still the internet was fairly slow, and we didn't have that many rights. And it took us until 2010 to have a great service where we had a lot of content, and the internet was fast enough. In 2010, we also launched our first international market, Canada, where there was no DVD, it was just streaming. That worked very well, so we started launching market after market. Finally, 2 months ago, launching in the whole world, not yet China, but everything else. And along the way, we've been transforming the service to be about original content. So when we started, we had old seasons of other people's content, including some great things like Breaking Bad. But we've moved into now producing our own content and debuting that. And some, of course, of the great stories you've seen, like Narcos, you know, created for us by a French company, Gaumont, who's the oldest movie company in the world, filmed in Bogota, Colombia, with a Brazilian star, and super popular in Germany. And this is the internet age, where content blends about through boundaries. And we'll see this in our series, The Crown. You've seen some clips of that. We think that's going to be globally incredible. But it's also about our Japanese anime. And someday, we hope to produce the best Bollywood that's ever been produced. And today, I know that's probably in our Indian contingency, there's no way. But at a time, we couldn't even produce a US drama series. Okay, and now we've got some of the best. So think of it as we want to produce the best Japanese anime and bring it to the world. And that's, and when I say we produce, that's commissioning, and it's, you know, local companies producing, like what we're doing today with The Crown and Peter Morgan producing. So what we hope to do in the fullness of time is to be as popular in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Turkey, in Poland, as we are in the US. And to be producing content in every nation of the world, and then sharing that content around the world. And so that's what we're shooting for over the next 10 or 15 years. And it seems crazy ambitious unless you think about, well, these big inflection points that come about every 50 years, like radio, free-to-air television, cable satellite television. People have built major new networks around that transition because everything's up for grabs. So why don't I stop talking and let you guys take over.
Now that you are talking about content, how are you addressing this issue of not every country having the same amount of content that the US have? You recently have a policy about VPNs. How do you see that happen?
Yeah, we're expanding all of our content to be global. As you all know from content rights, sometimes if it's a third party like Sony selling content, we'll get outbid in one nation and win the bidding in another nation, sort of like sports rights. And so what we're doing to get around that is both increasing the bid, so like How to Get Away with Murder, we get globally from ABC, and then also we're really focused on the producing these global series like Narcos and The Crown and The Get Down, and these global series. So think of it as it's a temporary issue. We know what everybody wants, which is the same catalog around the world. We're frustrated that we're not there, but we will get there and before anybody else.
So off the back of that question, and last time I talked to you, you didn't want to talk about this, but just in case you do now.
Worth a try.
VPN. So in Australia, big thing because everyone, a lot of stuff in the US library, a lot of people like to watch. You guys are cracking down on that. How is that happening? What's the technology rolling out that's stopping people from being able to use a DNS or VPN?
It's third-party stuff that other people have developed. As far as I understand it, it's like recognizing IP addresses. And so, the basic thing is if we license a movie here, and then another network licenses it in Germany, then we don't have the rights to display it in Germany. So that's why we have to enforce the VPN rules, just like Hulu and Amazon and others. So think of it as it's the maturation of all of internet TV is, respecting those boundaries. And the seller is not against us buying the Australian rights. They just want to make sure we pay for it. And we're trying to get them too. So part of this temporary.
So it's the content owner that's pushing you to crack down on this.
We have the obligation to respect the rights that we buy. It's just a simple fairness thing, which is, somebody else has paid for the rights, in Germany, then, we should respect it just as we would want it in return. And again, that's why you see this, and you'll see this across the industry, Google and others, and it's just the maturation of the industry.
I should just keep this crisp. I'm going to call on people.
You, go ahead, you do that.
So let's start with you, and then
Oh, okay. Why was it so important for you to flip the switch on so many countries at once? And also, how does globalization make your life easier, and how does it make it harder?
It was just more fun to flip all at once.
Just for marketing purposes.
Sure, we could have done it staggered. It would be fine too. Again, how it happens is very tactical. The impact of it is that now we get to do the content and let everybody have it. And so, don't focus on the micro part of the transition. It's sort of the big picture is now we're everywhere. But look, we're in English in Vietnam. But, that's not a mainstream service, right? We're in English, priced in dollars, okay, with international credit cards. So in many senses, we're barely launched, in Vietnam and Thailand and many other countries in the world. So now we have the hard work of getting out and localizing, having more local content, local currency, local billing options. So we have a long way to go to fulfill, the prize of what we want. We're in 20 languages now. YouTube is over 50.
Netflix invented the internet television, a different way to watch television, but at the end of the day, it's television. Right now, we were living in the golden age of the television.
One of the golden ages. There have been many. Yes, go on.
In that sense, what's the future of the television?
I think internet TV is just going to get better and better and better. More choice, competition between many more players, incredible content. But the next, again, if you look at the phase of cable television, 1980 until now, you know, it's a 30 or 40 year run. So, and of course, you know, radio didn't go away. Free-to-air television, starting in the 50s, didn't go away. So these things don't go away, but internet TV will grow for decades and decades.
Let's go over here and
Besides making it high quality and original, is there a certain philosophy for the content you want to produce, both for kids and for adults? Is there something sort of unifying that you talked about?
Not besides what you mentioned, which is, you know, we're not trying to be in a, if you're a linear brand, in the US you have a brand Hallmark, you know, and it's very kind of warm family thing, that's what it stands for. Then there's another channel like AMC, which is sort of edgy, characters matters thing. So they have to do that to differentiate. But we get to be many things to many people. We get to be an incredible kids brand, we get to be an incredible team, and so what we want to do is just please the user. And so what we do, every time we launch the title, we're able to figure out how many people are viewing it. Do they view it really quickly? Or does it take a long time to finish the series? Do they rewatch things? But it's a great, you know, so all of that is constant learning to make the next series better and better. And so, you know, we're trying to be a big learning machine to get to higher and higher consumer satisfaction, which we measure in viewing. If we get you to view, you know, from 5 hours a month to 10 hours a month, to 20 to 40 to 60, we're doing something right. Because people want to pin us down about competition, you know, and they want to say, you know, in Germany is Amazon the competition, you know, or in Australia is Stan the competition. And if you think about the last month, what did you do every night of the last month? And think that through. And how many nights did you watch Netflix? And what did you do when you didn't watch Netflix? Okay, you watched cable, you watched a sports game, you killed time on Facebook, you drank too much, you know, there's a whole lot of things that you did. And that's what we compete with. Okay, is all the things you do to relax and time. And so it's a very large pool. Right now, cable television has the largest fraction of that, maybe, you know, 10 or 20%. But most everybody else is like 1 or 2% like us of all of that viewing time.
let's go here and then we'll go to the back and then to you.
So I think data has been something we've talked about a lot, how data is used. But I was wondering if you could talk about how you use data to make some of your newer series and whether you're seeing any interesting trends right now that you haven't
There's a popular theme. Nothing comes to mind that we've seen that says, like, we should do a teenage horror thing, and we haven't, you know, that kind of thing. It tends to be a more back and forth process with the talent, where the creators will make a pitch, and then we'll do some analysis on how we think that will do, rather than us synthesizing like a boy band or something where, you know, the producers, you know, synthesize it. We haven't gotten to do something like that. I think it, you know, it's mostly we're able to do really good analysis on the creative vision to try to think about, you know, how much it will get viewed, and therefore what budget level could we put behind it.
Let's go to the back.
I have two questions, please. 일단은 모든 나라의 그 서비스 시작한다고 했는데, 그럼 중국은 언제쯤 서비스를 할 계획과 비전인지 그게 궁금하고, 두 번째는 이 넷플릭스 이제 테크 기업을 거듭나려고 하는데, 그 테크 기업을 거듭나려는 이유가 뭐죠?
It's a two-part question. First question is with your instant globalization, China is not included. So when do you plan to go into China? And second question is for the Netflix to become a true technology company, why would you want to become a true technology company?
So in terms of China, we're continuing to learn more and work with partners and develop relationships. But we have no fixed timeline. We're continuing to invest in work on. We're not trying to be a content company or a tech company, or we're trying to be the combination of all of those. The great companies today are able to combine multiple skill sets. So we want to be all of that. We want to be a great content company, a great marketing company, and a great tech company, and to synthesize that together. And it's challenging, but that's what makes it a competitive differentiator if we can do it.
Have you ever thought of getting into live television and to one of the most sought after contents on the web that we see today is, well, apart from entertainment, news. Have you ever thought of also making a news program?
Every incremental $100 million we have to spend on content, we think about how do we best please consumers with this additional money, because we've grown. And we've always answered that with more movies and TV shows, because we still have a long way to go to get what people want. So that's why we're so focused on making the movie and TV show experience better and better. So no news or sports.
Let's go over here.
So question. First one, so the theaters don't have 4K, don't have HDR. Pushing now. Kind of saying that Netflix is better than theater now.
Most theaters, at least in the U.S., have digital display now in 4K. And then if you have film, that's actually higher than 4K. So in terms of the picture quality, a movie theater is pretty good. But the inconvenience is high. You know, you've got to drive and park. The cost is high. And then depending on your movie theater, you may get a very loud experience with people talking on their phone and everything else. But we're not saying that we're better than the movie theater. Like, I go to the movie theater probably once a month to go watch a film. They don't have HDR now. That's right. But they can do it over time, just as TVs do. So, but again, we're not anti-theater. We want you to have choice on any given film. You can watch it at home, or you can watch it in the theater. The theater is great when it's a comedy, and you know the laughter is communal, and you're really influenced by when other people laugh. And sometimes when you watch something on your own, you know, it's a comedy, it's just not as fun. So again, mostly we want the consumer to have choice. They ought to be able to buy it. They ought to be on Netflix. They ought to be able to be in the movie theater.
As a former mathematics professor, do you still put your hand in the algorithm, or?
No, I think it was New Year's Eve in 2000. I made my family angry because I was spending all the time in Excel trying to mock up new algorithms and test them out on sample data. But since then, we've hired real mathematicians. They pat me on the back politely, try to explain some of the new techniques, but so I've been pushed out.
Let's go over there to the side.
Just small two-part question. One, what are the key learnings from the past couple of months that you want to share? Obviously, you've got suddenly a surfeit of data. Second part is a slightly broader question. You always come to represent, you know, when you say something's the Netflix of something, you start becoming like a disruptor in the space, right? What are the trends that you watch out for to avoid being disrupted yourself?
So in the first one, what have we learned? That consumers around the world want on-demand television, click and watch. That's really, we're going to come to see linear television as like the fixed line telephone. You know, it was good in its day, an improvement over the telegraph, okay? But the mobile phone with its portability is just fundamentally better. And on-demand television, click and watch, is fundamentally better. And we've seen that resonate around the world. In terms of the trends we watch, is all kinds of things. Certainly virtual reality, but also screen sizes. You know, what's happening with young people, what's happening with projecting, you know, the small screens up, what's happening with the way people listen in audio format, so kind of everything around that experience, and then everything around how content is being produced. What are the new techniques for filming? What are the new CGI techniques? So think of it as both the consumption and the production.
Okay, let's go here.
I've seen one third of the Americans sharing their password to watch Netflix. Where do you think the border goes between privacy and fairness?
Well, when you share the password, if you want to call it that, with your spouse, that's probably fine, right? When you do it with your kid who's living at home, that's probably fine. When you do it with your kid who's got an apartment but comes back a lot, well, maybe that's fine. But if you're, if you're sharing it, with the dorm room or something, 100 people, that's probably not so great. But we have a built-in limitation on it, which is on our standard plan, which is our $10 plan in the US. It's only 2 streams at a time. So if you share it, with more than your spouse, you're going to get locked out. Okay, so it's really not a big issue because we've got the simultaneous stream on the entry plan, the basic plan, which is $8 in the US. That's 1 stream at a time. Well, you're going to get hit by the stream limit. So I think it doesn't happen as much as people talk about because, again, if you do it too much, you hit those stream limits.
Well, let's go here, and then we'll work our way back around there and come back up again. So.
In the future, Netflix will have only original content. You will not have licensing agreements.
No, I will continue to be active in the license market. There's some great shows that we didn't produce, and we would like to carry them.
All right. As now that you're almost everywhere around the world, what's the next big challenge for us? Is it content? Is it connectivity?
Well, we're around the world in some narrow sense to English speakers with an international credit card. We're not really, so we have a lot of work to do to be, in most currencies around the world, in most languages, and then to broaden content production so that we're producing all around the world. Now we have a show in Germany, we have a show in Spain, we have a show in Italy, we have one in France, we have several in Brazil, we have 2 in Mexico. We're making progress. We have several in Japan, okay, but that needs to all be times 5 or 10. So we have work to do in terms of localizing product, expanding the content, and then all of that content produced, like Marseille is one coming up from France, that's available globally. So when we produce something locally, then we make it available all around the world.
Let's go to the back first.
네. 한국 같은 데 출시할 때, 그러니까 글로벌로 할 때 진짜 기대했던 컨텐츠가 없어서 너무 기다리고 있다가 실망한 경우가 많은데 초창기에 그걸 빨리 이렇게 강화시킬 방안이나 뭐가 있으신지 궁금합니다.
When you first launched in Korea, many people were highly anticipated, but with the catalog that you offered, some of them were somewhat disappointed. Is there any plans that you see that you can perhaps enhance those catalogs so that you can maybe satisfy those readers?
Absolutely. Every month we add more content. And we see this every time we launch in a country, from France, from the UK, from Brazil, that people want all the content in the world. And upon launch, it's like, oh, it doesn't have X or Y. And that's a natural reaction. So now what we're doing is just adding more and more content. And Judge, we talked about our Korean original movie.
We have, but that won't be till next year. We're making a movie called Okja. Director Bong but that's the only project that we have announced so far in Korea.
So we've got both the global originals and then this great Korean director who did Snowpiercer that making this movie.
Hi. I wanted to understand, given the different affordability levels of each market, will you be looking at differential pricing in different countries? That's the first.
We call that the 500 rupee question. Are you serious? Yeah, go on.
Right. And the second is, if you look at the Indian market, a lot of content consumption happens on the mobile.
Yeah.
Even YouTube was supposed to offer YouTube offline in India because a lot of people want to stream content when there's Wi-Fi and when they get the right speeds. So would you be considering offline viewing sometime soon?
We're definitely interested in customer satisfaction and listening to customers. In many of the markets that we've been in, Wi-Fi is getting stronger and stronger. I mean, we're now getting it on planes. I was on Lufthansa a few weeks ago, and I could watch the whole flight right across the Arctic. I could watch just on the plane Wi-Fi, Netflix. So it's pretty amazing. But we recognize that YouTube's made a different choice. In India, we're trying to learn more about it. And then in terms of the pricing, we have differential pricing already in the markets that we're localized in, like Brazil and Mexico. But in the markets where we're not localized, and I guess India, because of English, is sort of, we don't think of it as localized because we don't have the billing integrations, and we don't have local content, so it's much local. But we'll get there, and then we'll try to think about the pricing of
You mentioned some of the roadblocks in new markets with this big international expansion. I guess my question is, how much of that is out of your hands ultimately, because you have to work with local providers, and how much does Netflix control, and how does that impact your timeline in terms of when you can finally feel like it's truly penetrating these markets in a significant way?
Well, it's never under our control. In the U.S., we have to work with a lot of U.S. networks. It's not under our control. So it's not much different than, say, Latin America or Europe or the U.S. I mean, the internet infrastructure is pretty similar. Different countries, you have strong local providers, like in Brazil with Globo, but still has never sold us any Brazilian content, and they dominate stronger than any company in any market. So, we've seen issues of various types in various markets, and then we're able to find ways to program around that and work to satisfy consumers. So it'll be, I think of the goal state as we're as strong in Vietnam and Thailand and everywhere else as we are in the U.S. in terms of awareness and usage, and that's 10, 15 years. That's not overnight.
Since you were launching in the Middle East, what's your thought on the Middle East itself, and what's your approach toward the Middle East and the Arab audience?
Like every audience around the world, the Arab audience has unique needs and tastes. So we are in Arabic, but we don't yet have local billing integrations and local currencies. We're working on that. And we just got our first movie, Arabic movie. And so we're starting that expansion. So think of it as, we will offer more and more content, globally, but stories from the Middle East that then we make available globally.
So in that case, that movie, which would probably go in a few art houses around the world, it's a great movie coming out of the Emirates, will be on Netflix, available everywhere in the world. It'll get a much greater exposure to that.
We'd like to have a lot more from the Egyptian film industry, from the Iranian film industry, these pockets of highly developed film culture. And then, TV shows from around the world also.
So let's go to 1, 2, 3.
Was that me?
Yeah, that's you, man.
Before, when you were asked about trends that you're looking at, the first thing you said was VR. Is that something that you guys are heavily looking at into getting into yourself?
No, not for Netflix in the short term. It's really more of a gaming format than a watch TV. You don't want to spend a couple $100 on VR and then watch a flat screen that's not doing anything. So Netflix is integrated into those because it's easy, but I think that won't get a lot of usage in VR. When you put on VR, people want to be put around and do things.
You mentioned before you're gonna try to keep using it, or you're gonna keep offering third-party content. But before the expansion, you also offer your own content to networks and license it. Can you plan to continue this, or now that you're global, you're going to keep your own original content for yourself?
It'll vary by the show and the window, but we're not opposed to licensing the content. One of our originals, Miko Mermaids, is on Disney Channel right now in the U.S. Another one in Japan, Terrace House, is on, and it's 3G. So, you know, we're not opposed to it, you know, where it makes economic sense.
How do you measure success? We've seen all the awards in the lobby, and you said in the past that viewership isn't for any show so important. Not every show has to have high viewership. So if you would have to choose for a new show, what's more important, an award, an Emmy, or being a top 5 viewer?
It's not about being a top 5 viewer. It might be a small viewer if it's a small price. So it's the ratio of the price to the show. So we think of as efficiency. So a success is, you know, if we pay X and then, you know, it's huge viewing relative to what we paid. And then awards are great because they not only help the title get recognition, but they also help Netflix's reputation as where talent goes to get award-winning content. So they're both useful.
How important is net neutrality for Netflix, and in terms of how many resources do you spend on, for example, lobbying to hold the net neutrality level up?
You know, we make the case in various public letters that we write for net neutrality as opposed to specific lobbying. So it's more a case for the public. And then if the public really wants net neutrality, the politicians will follow that, right? Because that's what they're doing. And so it's building public support for net neutrality. With the core is the idea that, you know, when you get on the internet, you can go to any site, you know, without favor, you know, or harm. And so that is important, but it's also pretty well established. I mean, there's very few markets where I think that'll be a problem. So, it's, no, you think it will?
Yeah, because it's not fixed yet in Europe. They are still talking about, and they are talking about specialized services, and that ISPs should be able to charge specialized services.
In Europe, the old state telcos are active lobbyists, and then they have pressure on them because they've got pricing limitations, and people are using the internet more and more. So that's what creates some of the tension. But we haven't seen any active discrimination even in Europe, and so the general trend line seems to be better in practice. But I agree with you, it's a vulnerability, at least a potential.
So we're just going to take a couple more questions. You've had your hand up for a while back there, and we'll finish with you.
What's the plan for profitability for 2017?
We're profitable today. That is the plan. We've been profitable every quarter for 15 years. That is the plan. Stay profitable. That's the plan.
What's the strategy for how you're going to grow?
Okay, so you're pivoting from profit to growth. Our strategy for growth is the same as we've been doing for the last 15 years. They've been growing a little bit every quarter. So it's to say you improve the service, it gets more members, then you have a bigger budget, and you use that to get more content and do more R&D. Okay, so that's been the virtuous cycle we've been on for 15 years. Get bigger, use that, and I hope for a very long time, because internet TV, I mean, still we're only 75 million members, which is big in one sense, but relative to global footprint of the internet is small, and the internet continues to grow.
I'd like to ask about the China market. So aside from the regulation, local regulation in China, in terms of partnership, how do you see, what's your take on Youku, the Le TV? Second question would be, there's a rampant problem of copyright infringement probably in many Asian markets. What's your take on that?
On the first question, we're developing relationships with many of the players in China, so no specific comment on one versus another. And then on the second, internet piracy is an issue around the world, not limited to Asia. And what we've seen is when there's a low-cost, good service like Netflix, the piracy declines. It doesn't go to zero. But we saw this in Canada, where BitTorrent used to be 35% of the internet. Now it's under 10% of the internet in Canada. And Canadians are very law-abiding, so it's probably not a big surprise. But we're also seeing this in other countries where we get large. We're seeing this in Brazil and Argentina, that as we grow, piracy declines. And again, nobody thinks the piracy is going to go to zero. But I think by having a great commercial alternative that's low cost, high quality, we can capture a lot of people back to the convenience of watching a legal service.
All right, thanks. Reed's going to come along for drinks, so you'll have another opportunity to chat.
Meaning anyone can buy me a drink.
Anyone can buy me a drink. Anyone can ask more questions.
Well, I'll see you all at 6 o'clock tonight up in our. It's one of my. It's a very small restaurant. So I don't know how we're getting in this many people.
We are taking over the entire restaurant, and we're letting Charlie take a nap. So he's.
But it's a very fun, small, classic, like Los Gatos suburban place. So I'm sure they'll take great care of us. I'm only gonna be able to show up for a drink, but I'll have a drink with you before I head up. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Great. Did you survive these guys?
Yeah, they're good. They're fantastic.
They're probably nicer to you than to me. That's a guess.
They said that was good.
That's a guess. Yeah.
Last night I was in.
Fantastic. Very classy.
Very classy. So thank you so much for having me.
And I can't wait till series opens.
Yeah, you'll be up tonight.
Minute by minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
So a bit of housekeeping. We'll go now in the shuttle, and you should.
Just one thing before you go. I would just ask that tonight at dinner you can talk to everybody, and it's all whatever they say on the record. But just to keep a social atmosphere,
힘들어. 여러분, 다 끝났어요. 허리 아파 죽겠네. 여러분, 이게 영상 잡는 게 팔이 너무 아파. 그래도 또 참여해주신 여러분 고맙습니다. 오늘 행사 다 끝났습니다. 허리 아파 죽을 것 같습니다. 네, 녹음된 거 올라갑니다. 네, 여러분, 안녕. 팔 아파 죽는 줄 알았네요. 30분에 끝났는데 40분까지 되고 있네. 여러분 진짜 여러분 도라이브가 여기까지 왔습니다. 화이팅! 열심히 안녕. 여러분 진짜 안녕이야. 안녕.